Hey folks, so I don't even know if I'm gonna post this. We'll find out. I had this idea to do. I was actually trying to take a nap, which is, if I look a little mangy, why? And I got this idea because I've been struggling with this thing. I don't know if I'm going to get specific. If I don't have to get specific, I'm not going to. What I want to do is take you through this experiment that I'm going to do with myself right now, and if it's useful, then I'll post it. But the idea is less that like what I learn about my family and myself from this is less important than, and even the individual thing that's prompting this, than maybe that you'll be inspired to try something similar. So, what I'm going to try to do is only talk about what I have to to make this make sense. So I've been struggling with a thing that I think is somewhat ancestral. I see it in my family. I see it in my siblings. I see it in my parents. I see it in my grandparents. And uh, uh, just to kind of give it a name, I'll call it this sort of predisposition towards loss, right? Or taking the L, not in the sense of losing as grief, but like losing, being a loser. And so what I thought I would do is just sort of let the experience. So this is the thing I've been doing more and more with divination, with tarot, is letting my impulses and the cards guide me. And so what I'm going to do is a reading to kind of find out where in my line, right, on either side of my parents' lines, this tendency may have come from. And the way that I'm going to do that, I think, is I'm going to uh, shuffle this deck and I'm going to then distribute it into two piles. The pile on the left will represent my mother's line, and the pile on the right, my father's. Now, if you don't know your parents, if you don't have a relationship with your parents, your family, if you were adopted, you can still do this. You don't actually have to know anything about anyone in your line. What you're really looking at is uh the generation back rather than the individual person. So you actually this is you don't have to have any sense of your genealogy, any, so for those folks who don't have it, who've had it erased, etc., you can still do this because we're not looking at people, although we are going to use the court cards as our marker, I think. So again, I'm just kind of going through this as I do it. So step one is that I'm just going to like take a moment and just kind of feel, a thing in terms of just kind of just imagining backwards, right? And I'm just going to like, because I'm doing this position because of Reiki, but I'm not actually doing Reiki. I'm just kind of connecting to the idea of like this idea of like show me what generation and on what side of my family did this tendency towards defeatism and feeling like silenced, or whatever the thing is, right? Whatever it is you're looking for. Sorry, my nose is so itchy. Now I don't do drugs. It's too expensive. So I'm just kind of doing something I don't usually do, but I'm just letting like in a way kind of letting myself not be in any particular generation myself right now. If that's a way to think about it. Like I'm not necessarily me. I'm just sort of floating through, you know. I was going to say something judgmental about my ancestors and their colonial tendencies, but that's probably not a good way to make contact with anybody, at least judging by my living family. All right. So I have like an imagined sense of floating through the timeline of my generations, right? So I'm gonna shuffle. I can't even tell you what I mean by that, other than that I sort of just felt a moment of it. And I'm gonna shuffle until it feels like I should stop. Oftentimes that'll be when my mind starts to drift more often than typical when I'm shuffling. Ooh. I have a real sense of like something going on here in this like heart area. Not it's not a feeling, it's like a I don't know how to describe it. So I'm going to use this as my signal that it's time to stop. And now I'm gonna again, like you can see me doing. If you've been around here a minute, like you're gonna see me doing things I'd never do. I'm not gonna cut the deck. I'm just gonna do mother, father is sort of where this is going. And what I'm gonna be looking for, I'll explain as I do this, is when I turn these over, I'm gonna be looking for the first court card that I find. Doesn't matter what. And I'm just gonna go through the whole deck, which I know is not the most interesting thing to experience. But there is something soothing to doing this. It's my neurodivergence showing with my tendency towards rocking right now. That's not something I usually do, but I am like a foot shaker, a knee jiggler. That sounds disgusting. Look at that knee jiggler. I have some ideas of how this will go. But I'm also trying to stay open to the possibilities. If a court card shows up first in any of these piles, I'm gonna put it aside, but I'm not gonna worry about it right now because what I don't want to do is um explore the lives of my living relatives at the moment. Right. Just because again, it's like they have to. My living relatives need to deal with these things themselves. All right. So now I've got two packs here. Let me zoom in. Okay. So the one on my left, the one on the left represents my mother's lineage, I guess. God. And then the one on the right represents my father. So I'm just gonna go back until I find a court card, and that's gonna be the side and the generation. Okay, so this is my father's side, and it's four generations back. All right. So, we're gonna put the stack that I dealt out for my mother's side aside for the moment. Four generations back. I want to remember that. So I'm going to. I don't have any scrap paper around here, do I? I do have this bill. So we're going four back. So that would mean my dad is one back, my grandfather, my great father. So this is my great great, and it's the Knight of Blues. So this is the Knight of Cups. Now, right now, I'm not that worried about what that card means. Okay, what I want to do is I want to find out what the thing was. Okay, so again, what I'm saying right now is this is not a person yet. It's the indication of the generations backwards. So this is my father's generation, grandfather's generation, great grandfather's generation. So this would be my great ancestor's generation, right? Not necessarily my father's, could be grandmother, whatever. Could be an aunt. We don't know. Sorry, I just noticed this weird wax mark on the back of this card. All right, I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the Knight of Blues aside, or the Knight of Cups aside, and I'm going to take up the cards that represent that line, and I'm going to let them speak to me right now. So I'm going to ask the reading to tell me, and I'm going to do, I think, a 9-card box, honestly. Um, like, that sounds grim. Like, yeah, I think I'm going to have to do a 9-card box. But I'm just going to use this half of the deck, and I want to know, like, what was the moment in this generation that led to this tendency in my family today. It feels weird to shuffle only half a deck, I have to say. Why am I using only this part of the deck? The deck sorted itself this way, and in theory, I'm talking about my father's side of the family. This moment may have had roots way, way, way back beyond that. This may be where that moment had its consequential moment, or it could have been something that happened in that lifetime. I don't know. But the idea is that these are the cards that have made up, assembled to represent my father's side of our family, my family. And again, when I say father in this case, I could be talking about a test tube. It doesn't matter what your family relationship is. In fact, if you don't have a relationship with your family, this is a good way to deal with that. In theory, by exploring things without having to explore the people. You know what I mean? Like you can explore moments in your lineage that aren't necessarily about the people who may have caused you harm. All right. I think one more shuffle wants to. Actually, no. One more now. How do I know that? I feel it. All right. So I am going to cut this time. My body told me to. So I'm going to lay out my 9 card here. 4 of roots. That's wands. I'm sorry, pentacles. This wooden spoon I use for incense, by the way. Very cool. Got it from Ben and Jerry's. Um, Interesting that the chariot shows up. The chariot is one of my birth cards. So now I'm just doing this reading right now as though I'm reading for a client, except what I'm actually doing is reading for a generation in my past. So what do we got? 5 of roots, which is pentacles. Ace of axes, which is swords. 4 or 8 of cups, the chariot. Um, the king of jazz, which is wands. The 4 of roots, again pentacles. The magician. 2 of swords, 4 of cups, 9 of wands. Oh, this card kills me. Talked about this in my video. All right. So when we read for ourselves, it's not easy sometimes, but because I'm reading for a moment in the past of my family, I'm actually going to read this as though I'm reading it to you as a client, which is how I tend to read for myself anyway. All right. So we start in the 4 of roots, which is the 4 of pentacles. And so what we're getting here is this card is always really interesting to me because there's this scarcity attitude toward the card. And this would put, my grandfather lived in the Great Depression. 2 generations back, gosh, I don't have a sense of where that would be in time, but my family's never been wealthy. Um what I get is this is a moment where they've been holding on, they've been really clinging to kind of, I'll use the term hard scrabble existence. That is the 4 of roots. And the ace's axes boink, psh, cuts it off, and then there's this movement away. So I get the sense that there's a financial moment, which is ironic because I've been struggling with finances myself, um, where a meager but consistent and stable existence was in a flash wiped out. I think the work went, and I think that whoever was doing this work in that generation cared about it, but had to divorce themselves and maybe even leave the family behind in some way, right? Because then the 8 of cups, which is the 8 of blues, the 8 of cups is very solitary. The eights are quite solitary because there's so much about doing the work. This one feels very much about, like, I'm responding more to the image than I typically would here. But there's a sense of leaving the work behind. Again, again, a thing that I am going through in essence after having left my theater work behind. So then there's like this really interesting weird like I could be reading for me, who knows, right? But there's this really interesting moment now where like in these cards I'm actually seeing things that are happening to me, and I do think generational shit repeats. Why did I say it got cut off? The Ace of Axes, the Ace of Swords, right? Axe, sword. In this deck, axes are guitars, but axe. So I'm gonna sit with that for a second. I'm gonna ignore the luxury of this particular chariot. This pink Cadillac is not. This image is not informing that. It is just a movement. It's a leaving behind, and actually, we could interpret this image as the car driving away from that luxury. I don't think luxury was the thing, but stable and subsistence can be very luxurious if you're not used to it. So let's come down to this row here now, the second row. We have the King of Jazz or the King of Wands. Again, the Four of Pentacles or Roots and the Magician. There was a pride that was lost from the King of Jazz to the Magician. I'm reading the Magician in this case in its more street performer kind of way. So the King of Wands, there was pride, right? There was maybe even a little haughtiness in a job well done, in that sense of like, I may not have a lot, but I am the king of my castle kind of thing. And the Magician then is like, there's this boink, boink, boink. So at one time, this person may have either viewed themselves as capable of being the King of Jazz or King of Wands, or of being that. And they fell a little, but they managed to hold on until it became time to kind of do something that they viewed as degrading. Now, it's interesting because of my work in this field, right? I talk a lot about survival jobs and how fortune telling was a survival job. And there's a connection to the Magician there. I'm not saying that I think this ancestral person became a fortune teller, but what I think is that if they are viewing me now, having gone through this, and saying, "Oh, what do you?" So, I'm going to reveal some context for you, which is when I gave up theater, which was taking up all of my time. One of the reasons, it was not just the shit I was dealing with in that space. I felt like life was pulling me more towards tarot. I felt like that's where things wanted me to go. And I still struggle with my own bias against this work, by the way. Like, it's not a fake thing. I would say there's an ancestor who's looking now at my family, in this case me, but at my family as like, oh, you never got it back, did you? You couldn't even do what I did. There's a judgment there. And it's coming out of their own feeling of fall from grace. The Magician in this case representing a fall, which is not typical, right? I don't usually read the card that way, but I do read the card as kind of a street performer. And there's the sense of like the King of Jazz is giving like, I'm the King of Jazz. I'm Louis Armstrong. That's not Louis Armstrong. You know what I mean? Like, I'm famous for what I do. I may not be the wealthiest, but I'm consistently respected on this planet and in this work. And now I'm a street performer. Sort of, right? That's the metaphor. I don't think of this literally. And so there may be a sense of like, what are you doing? You're constantly trying to be a street performer, whether it's theater or tarot or whatever. Like, why aren't you trying to elevate who you are? It's almost like there's a real clinging to like the capitalist American dream in this card, right? Like that generational person lost something they felt they were entitled to, partly probably through their own resistance to change, right? Because fours are very conservative, and we've got the 8 above it, which sort of doubles the 4, which is very, very, on brand for my family. So now we get down to the bottom row here, and we have the 2 of axes, or the 2 of swords, the 5 of cups, or blues, and the 9 of jazz, or wands. Interestingly, the King of Jazz knights to the 9 of jazz, or the wands, right, if we're using knighting, which I tend to do. And I think this just sort of, like, tells, if I use the knight's arc, right, or the knight's L, actually, let's start up here. There was a sort of naive assumption of grandiosity, something else I struggle with. And their blindness to their naivete actually was part of the reason why things got so fucked up. And if we notice, this card is flanked by these two cups cards, or topped and bottom, whatever, flanked by these two cups cards. And so this was a real blow to their sense of spirit. This was a blow to their sense of autonomy and self-image, and probably in their belief in themselves, and probably in their belief in the world. Let me just pause this. There's a real loss of, like, self here. And it really became they were singing for their supper. All right, so sorry, I'm just, again, I'm trying to sort of decide what to talk about myself and whatnot. So now I'm gonna boink the columns. Be ready to get boinked columns. Now I already sort of did this one. It was innocence. I think it was innocence for this person. They were just naive. They just believed in what they'd been taught, and that forced them into sort of a blindfolded state. If I look in the middle column, I think this was emotionally. I mean, I can, you can feel it. Eight of Cups, Five of Cups. These are two of the sadder Waite-Smith images. And it's almost like being torn between sort of like moving on and going to greener pastures, or staying where you are and sort of more. And it was like they never got over it. They carried with them the disappointment and the feeling of being a loser, which is sort of what the reading is about. And then this last column is just this descent into hell almost. From the luxury, the imagined luxury, this was probably what they imagined they were working toward, to being a street performer and then just being like a haggard ass, you tired ass showgirl, kind of thing. And so this was the moment for one of my ancestors on my father's side that impregnated this pattern. And I think I see it in my dad and because I don't really know a lot of my extended family, but I can see it in my father. I can see it in both my father's parents. And I didn't know my great grandparents. Um, Without revealing too much, there is a quality on my dad's side of the family of bouginess, unearned bouginess that I had moments of, and I see in both my dad and my grandmother sometimes. Sorry, not that my dad's gonna watch this, but you know what I mean. So this is what it was, and so now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take a picture of these just so I can remember. What I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna put all of these cards back into the deck, this side of the deck, including my generational card. 4 generations back, technically for me 5. I'm going to put this card back in, and I'm going to shuffle again, and I want to know how I can send healing back to that moment. So I'm going to do what I think I'm going to do is a Lenormand technique, where I'm going to shuffle this set, and I'm going to find sort of where the 5 card thing comes from. Is in Lenormand, you look for the significator and you get the cards that surround it. And again, I'm sticking with this assembly because I think the medicine is also in the poison. It's rearranging the poison so that it becomes medicinal. It's gonna be a long video. All right. One more, I think. So what I want to do now is look for the Knight of Blues or Cubs. Knight of Blues. All right, so we're gonna do this goes here, 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 and then these go here, here, and here. And so what we're getting are the cards, the four cards on either side of the knight in this case. So now I'm looking for the medicine. Now, we typically don't read a significator in a spread, especially in a Lenormand reading. Obviously, this is not Lenormand. But I'm going to read the Knight of Blues here because I think now I'm going to need to know something about that person, that event, that moment, and my family. And it's going to be told in the card. And the card is the Knight of Cups. And so there's a real romanticism here. This is a person who absolutely saw, there was dreaminess. I don't know what they did. There was probably some spiritual aspect to it. Um, but they were a dreamer. They were not a very good business person, though. So their own dreaminess got in the way of it. But then the solution is to dream, right? The solution is to then reimagine what that means. And now I start reading the spread. All right, so Knight of Blues, Knight of Cups with the Nine of Jazz or the Nine of Wands. We're getting another repeat card here. So these two cards are very, very linked now. It's hard for me to get a sense of this card alone or in partnership with the Knight of Blues. The Nine of Wands is a card of like, you just have to fucking keep going. Like, first of all, this whole top row is all wands, too, which is really interesting. And actually, what do we got? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 wands cards or jazz cards. One thought card, one axe or sword card. Right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah. One major, two cups. And I love that the devil is the major we got. I love that. Anyway, so again, I'm just gonna read this as though I'm reading for a client. And I think I would say you got into this. No, I'm not gonna say that. If this were a client, I would say, look, your idealism is both a blessing and a curse. It's rare that I need to be this quiet during a reading, but this typically happens when I'm reading for myself. So I can see that my ego is trying to solve a problem. And so what I really need to do is get out of my head a little bit and just start yakking, I think. Um your idealism is a blessing and a curse because you work too hard at putting all your energy into some kind of idealized version of what success looks like. And so it's really more a matter of being curious. But I don't like that answer at all. That feels like a contemporary solution to a problem that happened 100 years ago or more. Do you see? This is a thing where I think a lot of us get stuck as readers, and we might start shaming ourselves at this point, right? But the problem is that the question is a container that we just need to keep coming back to. I'm looking for the answer, which is medicine. Like, what is the medicine that needs to be taken in order to heal that moment? Um that's a big thing to do, you know what I mean? And so it's a lot of pressure on a reader. But the question can help us remain within the bounding boxes, right? And so if we're getting something that isn't within the container of the question, we just have to keep trying, and that's a very difficult thing to accept sometimes, but it's the reality. Um, Maybe I don't worry about the my typical way of doing things here. Nine of Swords, I'm sorry, Nine of Wands, Eight of Wands, and the Page of Wands is like, yo, you gotta actually put your energy into the complete and total joy of doing. I'm just gonna keep going. I don't like that. It sounds like bullshit to me. And it doesn't sound like the answer to this question, but I'm gonna keep going. Why am I saying this? 9-8 page. It's where the energy is sort of, it's like this workaday bullshit of like, oh, poor me, needs to be put into just making more interesting things. Or just playing the fucking music. You know what I mean? If I distilled this whole row, it'd be like, play your fucking music. I'm not a musician. That's a metaphor, right? This is a music themed deck. There's no secret doctrine that solves your feeling of being a loser. Like the Seven of Swords here, the Seven of Axes is like there's no secret, there's no mystery to thinking differently. It's actually like loving the dreamer part of you and fucking almost going whole hog into it, right? Like, don't just dream it. Like, oh god, I'm not gonna say don't dream it, be it. Like, do it. Again, I don't like that answer, but I'm gonna keep going. Bottom row. The Devil, Ace of Blues, or Ace of Cups, Queen of Jazz. Love this Queen of Jazz. By the way, love this deck. You're gonna do what you're gonna do anyway because it's what you're made for. Even when your cup is empty, you're gonna do it. The medicine is the doing. It's like there's no spoonful of anything that solves this. It's the doing. You just got to do. All of these jazz cards, the knight and the queen, it's like do it. Just do it. The page, this whole column is the page of jazz, the knight of jazz, and the queen of jazz. The only thing that's missing is the king. And the king is what you do when you retire. It's so fucking annoying. I hate this reading. This answer. I hate it. You just gotta keep doing the fucking thing you're doing. Like, that's how we solve the problems, by suffering through more of the shit that's making us unhappy. I'm being snarky. Looking at the columns, the Nine of Jazz or the Nine of Wands, the Seven of Swords, and the Devil. You can think and put all your energy into solving a problem you already know the answer to, that you've always known the answer to. You can get locked into your sort of self analysis and your dwelling on the failures. But you already know what you are. This is why reading for ourselves is difficult. And I'll tell you why I'm saying that. The devil is sort of that thing of what we are, it at our deepest self. I could say that you're getting trapped in doing that, but I already know that. Like the whole family has been trapped in this. It's like you can think and think and think, but you've just got to do the thing you were put here for. The Eight of Wands. Now I'm moving to the second column. Eight of Wands, Knight of Cups, Ace of Cups. I mean, in such a weird way, it's like you got to refill your own glass. You've got to like put your back into the shit that fills your own glass. That makes you feel spiritually replenished, rather than ignoring what it is you know you're supposed to be doing and getting trapped in this, like, well, what if I try this again? Like, there's no solution, there's no like key, there's no secret code. It's you just got to do shit that makes you feel spiritually rewarded, and like not do shit that doesn't. And and I mean that almost like you actually have to like intentionally make the effort to pour yourself inspiration and love and, and optimism and dreaminess. Like, dreaminess is what got you into this, and it's what gets you out of it. I mean, the final column is all about making. It's all about doing. It's all about thwomping your thwomp. It's like you got like do the fucking thing. And then when that thing's done, you do the next fucking thing. And you don't fucking worry about the reaction to the fucking thing. You just do the next fucking thing. Why do I say that? The page is always going to do the next thing. The knight is always going to do the next thing. And the Queen of Jazz is not concerned with what you thought about any of it. She knights to the Seven of Swords and to the Eight of Wands. Wands are her own realm, so she's connected to them, but she's not like she carries all of the jazz cards she carries with her, but not the axe card. She's not concerned with what anyone thinks. She's just going to keep making her music. I hate that answer because it's it's both true and not good enough. You know what I mean? Like, sometimes out of a reading we want the secret chord. We want the secret key. That's what that Seven of Axes is giving me in this reading. Is like there's like a key that unlocks the mystery. Nope, there's no mystery. The devil means you've always known what you were gonna do. The way out of the pattern is to keep doing the opposite of the thing that got you there, which is not doing and 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 not it's almost like that sort of judgmental vibe in the first, that sort of snobby vibe in the first reading, is like your own standards are the problem. You're the one who's not interested enough in what you do. All right. So what I'm going to do right now is something, again, a little odd for me. But I'm just going to gather these cards back up, just this 9, and I'm just going to do a little. I'm just going to do a little moment with them. And I might talk, I might not. I have no idea. Let's just see what happens. I just want to kind of release. I want to offer this ancestor a release from their own embarrassment. They don't have to judge themselves anymore. So I'm gonna just sit here for a second and just try to offer that to them. I think I'm gonna say Ancestor, represented by the Knight of Cups. Dreamer, who stopped dreaming. When they woke too soon. Everybody goes through that who isn't a legacy admission. There's nothing to be embarrassed about. Life is a series of cycles. The Wheel of Fortune always spins. There are 78 different versions of the Wheel of Fortune. You experienced some. And when the results weren't yielding what you hoped, you stopped the wheel. Spin it again. Spin the wheel again. There's 78 of them. If you don't like that wheel, try the next one. You don't have to judge yourself for things that happen to everyone. And you don't have to judge your descendants either. Everyone, or most people, do the best that they can most days. You're free of that embarrassment. And the generations that follow you are free of that embarrassment. In fact, let's cut it off right now. Here's your embarrassment. Here's you. Ready? Whoosh! Whoosh! It's dissolved. Now I'm actually just sending a little Reiki. And I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to find that Knight card, and I'm actually going to take this is the Reiki crystal I use for readings, for clients, for Reiki readings, and I'm just going to charge it again. I always do this when I use it. And I can usually feel when it starts pushing back, weirdly. Like, not pushing back, but it's like, nope, I'm full, and now I'm sending it back to you. Which happens pretty quickly, because this is a fairly large quartz. Yep, I can feel my I can feel my hands. So I'm just gonna leave the Reiki crystal on this card for a little while. I hate leaving decks out like this, but I'm not gonna do it overnight. I'm just gonna leave it for an hour or so. And I'll probably repeat something like this. But anyway, so thanks for taking this interesting little journey with me. That that's what I got for you. It's interesting. That whoosh whoosh whoosh, if that was weird for you to see me do that, that actually also is a Reiki clearing technique. And it just happens to be at the forefront of my mind right now because I was doing Reiki earlier. So, it just felt like the right thing to do. But that's where I'm going to leave it. And I'm just going to try to repeat some Reiki sessions, and I'm going to try to repeat this mantra now of like, finish when you finish the first thing, move on to the next thing, and don't worry about the past thing. Right, that part, like, you did your work on that, great. What's going to happen is going to happen. Now it's time to work on the next thing. That's kind of the medicine I think I'm going to try to give myself. We'll see how good I do. So that's it. I hope this was a fun little journey for you. It's a long one, but let me know what you think. Take care, be well, and we will talk soon. Be good.